Through all of the hardships we as a humanity face, there are still undeniable unifying forces that bind us. Folk music, or music of the people, as Chris Coroner describes it in a Study.com article retrieved 2020 in November, is the music that has the power to unite. In other words, the role of folk music within popular culture is something to recognize, as well as its beautiful history of uniting the common folk. With this, I shall go into detail about folk music and inform my audience about its origins as well as its meaning within popular culture. The origins of folk music is of great intrigue. According to MB, from a 2007 article, Folk Music, A Guide to Folk Music of the World, MB explains the origins of folk music to have branched out in many directions following the 19th century. A genre of folk music is described to have originated during 19th century England as music for the people. MB explains how this origin of folk music led a big role in the Romantic era of art and performance. This era featured artists such as Joseph Haydn and even Beethoven, who too found inspiration in the habits of the common folk. From England, this genre expanded across the world. Through the 1930s and the 1950s, artists such as the Weaves and the Beatles began introducing traditional and more modern folk music, bringing the sound of the commoner into popular light. The 1960s continued this trend. As the Vietnam War took hold of the public eye and the civil rights movement grew more and more present, protest music, or a separate branch of folk music, became more popular as it sent a message of activism and change to positions of authority. Artists such as Bob Dylan and Joan Baez were prominent performers of this time. This is also according to MB from Folk Music, A Guide to Folk Music of the World, and Chris Coroner from a Study.com article. Although MB describes folk music to have faded away during the 70s, the 90s seem to have brought it back into popular light with a more acoustic and relaxing sound. As we discuss the origins behind this wonderful genre, let's look into its role in today's society. Folk music has great meaning within popular culture. As the Erasmus University Rotterdam team discusses in their 2017 article, Why Folk Music is Making a Comeback, they describe that with bands such as Mumford & Sons and John Bon Iver, that folk music is growing appealing to current generations. They describe how with technology growing more present in the ways we communicate as a society, that the online participatory culture finds music, that folk is music, appealing and reverts back to a simpler time. This being a time where communicating about democratic and egalitarianistic ideals were spoken truly and freely without the consumption or overbearing influence of the media. Folk music is also described as being an appeal to the newer generations as they find themselves purchasing more organic foods and practicing more sustainable lifestyles, which is truly something that folk lyrics tend to preach. This too is according to the Erasmus University Rotterdam team. Folk music has also evidently shown itself to be prominent in popular culture through its production and consumption as it's growing more vital within widespread culture. According to 2019 History 101 article by Casey Long, Long describes how folk music is being consumed and produced more as the adaptation of folk music into indie folk is becoming more popular. Long describes this genre of folk as being a blend between pop and folk music. This genre has been expressed by artists such as, again, Mumford & Sons and the Lumineers as we see streaming. This genre is also described as relating more and more to the somber tones of recent generations as they find sanctuary in the simplicity of this genre considering the increase in stress and anxiety across generations. Folk festivals and concerts are also being widely consumed on an international level. Referring back to the 2007 article by MB titled Folk Music, A Guide to Folk Music of the World, MB describes folk music's revival as being followed by an increase in folk performances, such as England's Cambridge Folk Music Festival, as well as the Port Fairy Music Festival in Australia. These performances are just minor examples of the tremendous popularity that folk performances have gained in recent years. With this, one can understand the significance and meaning of folk music within popular culture. Although we face hardships as a human race, there are powerful movements that bind us. Folk music is one of these movements, and with such rich origins, as well as such a present role in popular culture, we have lots to recognize folk music for.